My name's Mark Carter. I'm one of the chaplains here at Tug Valley Regional Medical Center. Today I'd like to read from Exodus chapter 2, verse 11. And it says, "And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews stove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedst the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian." Now, Moses was 40 years old at this time, and he had a passion, a love for his brethren, and he seen them how they were being treated, and he knew that God wanted to deliver them, but he kind of stepped out on his own, not on God's timing, and letting God do it. So he flees to Midian, where he spends 40 years, which 40 years is a time of judgment. And we see, as Stephen says in Acts, he tells us, he said, when Moses' time had expired. So when his 40 years of judgment was up, of spending time in the desert, learning to be a shepherd, learning these skills, then this is when God speaks to Moses in the bush. Now, Moses goes back with God leading the way back to Egypt, does God's will on God's time, and we see that he brings the children of Israel out of Egypt and brings them to Mount Sinai. Now at this time he's 80 years old. Now the thing is, the whole time that Moses was in Midian, the people in Egypt were still making the brick. They were still in slavery. They still was having to gather their own straw for their brick. They were still suffering because he had jumped the gun and he had made a mistake. Now they leave Mount Sinai, they go to the land of Canaan, the 12 spies go in, they come back out. 10 of the spies begin to murmur against Moses and murmuring to God and about God and everything, that these people are too big, we can't take this land. They wouldn't want to trust in God. But Joshua and Caleb said that they could take the land. So this is where that they were to travel in the wilderness 40 years, 1 year for every day that they were spying in the land, which was 40 days. Now Moses was having to suffer because of their disobedience and their unwillingness, and he suffered 40 years in the wilderness with them. Well, what my point I'm trying to come to on this is, when we make a mistake, and we're human, we are going to make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, someone suffers for that while we're learning this mistake. Somebody's going to suffer. Maybe somebody has to stay in sin longer because we don't get to testify to them. But whatever the case may be. And it's the same way. When we see someone make a mistake, we should help them. We should correct. The Bible tells us we should correct them and help save their soul. But the thing is, we shouldn't beat down on them because they made a mistake. We should be like Moses, even though he had to suffer the 40 years in the wilderness. We should suffer with our brothers and sisters to help them come out of these problems, help them to learn, help them to get up on their feet instead of beating them down and tearing them down. We're all in this together. And I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this little message, and may God bless you.